Hi, Yiddy. Welcome to Let's Be Real. Let's be very real.
Glad to be here. I'm just a little upset that I didn't get to wear the headphones and the microphone in front of me. It's part
Uh,
of the excitement of knowing. That's how I know I'm really on a podcast. If I'm sitting with headphones and a big microphone, and there's camera
yeah,
equipment in front of me now, it just feels like,
yeah. My office it was like a serious setup.
yeah.
I thought that I'll start my first episode with either you, Tati, or my son or Shloimi, and I figured that's just the closest place to get started, since my goal is to put episodes out and see where it goes and bring value the best way I could. So I've been fortunate to have all these different guests and friends and practitioners who have been coming on here and sharing with me and with my viewers their wisdom. And for those who don't know, I'm talking to Yiddy, my brother, my younger brother. We work closely together in my business for many years. We're close in many ways. A lot of the work that I put out, the graphics, the website, the wording, just bouncing off ideas, is Yiddy. He brings another dynamic to my work, and sometimes an opposite dynamic, which helps me find a balanced place within my own goals. A lot of my coaching clients know you. I don't know if I told you this, that I use you as a reference. I'm like, well, if you would know my brother, you would see what different would look like,
Oh, so
and and
I'm a case
and
study.
and healthy. So that's what I try to, that's where you come in. So some of my closer people in my life know you through the examples I give or through stuff that I share, which is not very personal or private, but just an example of a well-rounded, solid, but also kind. I think that the last episode, Mo and we had a I didn't post it yet, but it'll be out by the time this is out. But we spoke a lot about narcissism, and my example with clients of being self-reliant and liking oneself, clear and confident, but not necessarily be what people would call narcissists. I'm not clinically, but what people use about one another. I use you as an example for that. So thank you for being here, so I can pick your brain.
Use me
You know,
as yeah, hold on. Use me as an example.
of not being that you can actually you
Okay.
can actually like yourself enough and be kind, and
Yeah.
you're an example for that.
Wow. Had I known that I'm
I'm
getting this kind of introduction, I would have been on this podcast a long time ago.
I know you want it, but everything happens in the right time. So this podcast, this recording is struck by a specific conversation we've been having,
Yeah.
and we both decided it's a good idea to record it and share it with people. I have a topic of conversation which is directly related to your line of work, and um, where I find the clarity that maybe we can get between our conversation be valuable for other people. So maybe you can introduce yourself and tell our viewers what you do and how you, like, what solutions you bring for people, and then we can get into a little bit of a debate.
Okay. So, hello, my name is Yiddy. I'm a vapaholic. Uh, no, my name is Yiddy Kenigsberg. So just like you gave me this introduction, I'll say a few words about you. I'm your brother. You're mine. And honestly, you know how some people they have a brother who is a real estate mogul or a real estate icon, and when they introduce themselves to a stranger, they're always going to say, my name is X, and you probably heard of my brother, right? That's like the way they use it as street cred. They use it as that. I use you and the things you do as street cred. I use your name whenever I could, especially because a lot of people know you. But it's because I'm very proud of what you do. I'm proud of uh, putting yourself out into the world, the way you are real, just like this podcast. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
I don't need to praise too much. I'm sure that the viewers are here for a reason. But yes, I'm really proud to be your brother.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what do I do? I do branding and marketing. That's what I do.
Yeah, they say like short and to the point, right? Take it to the bank is the line, right? Your
Yeah,
line. So yeah, branding and marketing.
yeah,
So the topic of conversation that we've been having recently, I think quite a few times, is pricing and how does one decide how much to spend on their venture for branding, for marketing, for putting themselves out, and so on.
yeah.
And my particular interest is because what I work with people a lot about is what's the next step.
Hmm.
And I have conflicting thoughts, my own opinion. Like in coaching, I try to hold a mirror for people to see what's right for them. I think that what's right for me or what's right for people has a lot to do with what they're told, right? Society tells us what's right and what's not right. And there is a standard now that in order to do anything, given the online circles, given the way branding works, given the way social media works, that there is this notion that in order for me to get started with anything, I need a solid identity, I need a solid branding package, I have to spend so and so money about with putting myself out, launching. Like a launch means that I have a branding package that costs 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, $80,000. And in two episodes ago, maybe three, I recorded with Simcha Beller, who he like said like it very often that's not what's going to get you out. Maybe that's going to, he didn't say that, but I thought to myself, maybe it can double revenue. It can go from a personal kind of client book to more global or more reaching out to new circles. But a branding package to get started might not particularly be the next step. Yet you find people that are like they feel like the real big step that they took towards their brand is that they spend $80,000 on an item. Like they
Yeah,
import an item, they want to sell it online or have a storefront, whatever it is, they spend that at 60, 70, $80,000 on branding. And like I said, like in coaching, I'll try to hold a mirror for people to find out what's right for them. And maybe we can have a conversation about like what's the standard and what's true, what's real. That said, I have opinions and I'm shy with it
uh-huh.
because I remember with having opinions about a lot of things and still until I did it. I had opinions when I was a little bit younger about a lot of things, like drivers and sanitation in New York City, if they should block the street or shouldn't. This should be like this, that should be like that. And with the years, I've done different things and I've started to understand really what it takes to do those things. And my opinion changed. So what I learned is, which is again the beauty of podcasting, that maybe I can learn something I don't know yet, besides my own opinion. So
Yeah,
although I made this introduction of maybe it's not the right thing to spend $80,000 on a brand, maybe there's more to it that I don't know about, and
yeah,
maybe there's something about the branding industry that I don't understand, and maybe there's some wisdom that could be shared about what people's next steps should be as they want to expand what they do and how they sell and like put themselves out and increase their revenue and reach their goals.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Okay, processing. um, okay, so what I'm thinking is there's often a misconception that branding, it's like you pointed out earlier, that people has to have this thought or this misconception, or it became like almost trendy or market norm, where people think, okay, if I spend an insane amount of money on branding and I hire the biggest agency or the best marketing team, if I do that, I will be successful. My business will take off. You know, there's like that kind of like thought process or misconception where people say, good branding, I'm going to be successful. So in order to dive into that, let's kind of talk about what branding is. Let's talk about what marketing is. There's a big difference between branding and marketing. It's two different items, two different things completely. There's this great, like for marketing, there was this, I can't believe that I didn't hear this analogy until this week, but I heard it this week and I have to share it. So there's this analogy on marketing that goes like this. The circus was planning to come to town. Did you hear this ever? Okay, so the circus decided to come to town. They decided to come to the village. they sent the scout to the village to look at the people, the places, and figure out where to put up their tent, where they're going to do it. That is market research, right? That is target demographic analysis, right? That's the research aspect. That's the discovery phase. Okay, then they set a date and they put up a poster in the town hall saying circus is coming to town on Sunday. That is advertising, right? You could see where I'm going with this. That is advertising. Then they took that poster, they strapped it onto an elephant and paraded it through the town. Okay, that is promotion. Okay, when they paraded the elephant through town, they decided they made sure that they're going to go through the mayor's backyard, the town mayor's backyard. Okay, so the elephant walked through the backyard, and there was a press article about it. They wrote it in the newspaper. That's publicity. They made sure that the mayor made a comment that he really enjoyed it and it was funny and he laughed. That's public relation, right? They got down on the day of the event. They set up a huge, in front of the tent, a huge team dressed in costumes and whatnot. And they were telling people what they're going to see, what the acts are going to be like and all that stuff, and selling tickets. That's sales, right? That's sales. Now, if a person choreographs, right, plans, organizes, and does all these steps, right, he's the one that did everything for this. That is marketing. Okay, so it's really nice. An analogy like this really like gives you perspective, makes you understand. So that's marketing. That has really nothing to do with branding, because branding would really talk about what does the poster look like, what's the name of the circus, what do people know about them, how do they feel when they see the poster and they see that the circus is coming, right? That's a whole,
What do they compare this circus to, and so on?
yeah. How does this circus, if there's a circus coming to town every month, which one are they excited for, right? So it's
How do we stand out? Yeah,
branding is that aspect of design or business development, and marketing is the proactive things that you
the
do.
output,
Yeah, the
to
output.
put it out, to
Yeah.
reach people, to reach eyes.
Hmm.
Branding is actually who I am conveyed outward, and maybe also tweaking who I am, figuring out actually who I am. Am I really like the other circus, or do I bring something different? It's really a soul. I think you shared this with me a few weeks ago, that it's a lot like coaching, because it causes the, like in the part of branding, your clients end up really digging deep and understanding their own business, which used to be on autopilot. There's a demand, there's a supply, they have an item, and now they're really looking at themselves, finding out who they are.
Yeah. So exactly, and I'll touch on that. So uh, back to what I was saying, the misconception that people think that a good branding, and creating a phenomenal logo and beautiful identity, that's going to give their business success, or that's not it. You know what is? Their business, the service they provide, the experience people feel when they use their service, the process, the philosophy, the value, right? Those things are actually going to determine if a business is successful, right? But still, branding is almost like the personality, the identity, the goal. So let me break it down a little bit more. So I said that the success is from the service that you provide, the product that you offer, how people help people. Now, how do they know that this product, service, thing, experience, how do they know it exists? That's part of branding. Not the outreach, the actual identity. A good example, let's use an analogy. It worked for marketing. Let's try and do that for branding. Okay. Um, in your line of work, you deal with coaching people, right? And people, it's all about themselves. It's all about the self, right? And you mentioned it earlier. So let's use that as an example. Branding, the self is step number one. Who am I, right? And now translate the analogy to a business, so to speak. So who am I? What is my purpose? What value do I bring? How do I change the world, right? What's my point, what's my tachlis in this life, right? All these things are the core, the self. And that's the same for a company. The brand itself, in order for a company to be a brand, Those are the things they need to ask. Then, just like humans, just like a self, you have different things that distinguish you from somebody else, right? Every human is unique. You have different things, even visually, right? Somebody has freckles, somebody has this color here, this color eyes, that color eyes. And some people have birthmarks, right? So there's things that distinguish you and make you stand out as a human, as from a visual perspective. And a brand would need that too. Like a branding package would cover that.
I think that one of the things that I specifically shared with people on my last retreat was that who they are is their greatest asset. Like specifically the things that are they think makes them different and maybe less good is actually their value,
Yeah.
because it creates that like, I like that. And what's that? Everyone has that. That's different. So the very same thing that I think might make me less is actually something that can be a benefit. For example, if you compare, I'll throw it back at you, but if you compare a design studio with 50 people working there, how do I know that I get a
Experience.
personalized experience versus if I work with an artist that's going to craft something creative for me that works in a smaller company. He has a smaller team and he, has a different workflow. And that very difference can be a chesuden, it could be a critique, or it could be actually the value that they bring. And it could be there are companies who need to hire some big agency, and there are certain clients that are going to be attracted to that individual piece. I think also with my retreats, like people go to retreats that are part of a big umbrella that has retreats every month, and that gives them, there's a system in place. And there are other people I know with my retreats, my personalization is actually something that I stand out, and I'm glad to do it that way. So what you're saying is that a part of brand identity, part of branding, is that thing that we stand out, the thing that we're different, and that can actually be used as a great as a resource, as a way to connect with people.
Yeah. So there is a lot of, when it comes to branding, there's so many books, and I've read many, and not everyone is the same. There's no right way or wrong way. There's many different opinions when it comes to branding, and really it evolves with the market. You can see like trends and things, brands evolve, and every brand, just like a human, just like I'm not who I was when I was a teenager.
Mm.
A brand will evolve and will keep up with trends.
Well, you recently said 3 years ago that you thought you reached a peak in your
Yeah,
creativity,
yeah, yeah.
and you look at your work now, and you're like, "Whew! I actually thought I reached my peak." So you're saying that the identity itself can evolve, and it should evolve.
It
It's a
should
good
evolve,
thing.
because just like self, just like a human, a brand, a company has its own identity, and it has its own unique traits and its own value propositions, and it should evolve. It should evolve with the market. It should evolve with what consumers are after, and trend, style, right? It should keep evolving, and that's not an issue at all. The core elements, right? The core elements of what I believe, why I'm here, those are things that usually don't change, because this is why this company was created, or this is the service that I bring, and this is what I stand for. Those are like core items that don't necessarily change, but the way I say it, or the way I approach, my external identity and my language, all those things, those evolve, and that's how good brands evolve. If you look at big brands, let's look at Apple, known around the world. Apple, their visual identity, their logo evolved, right? It doesn't evolve so often, but it did evolve. It's used to be not an apple at all, and then it turned into an apple that's fully colorful, like a rainbow, and then it turned into a metallic, like silver apple, and then it turned into just a plain color, like white and black. So there's reasons behind it, and big brands always, you'll see Pepsi did it, and Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola really didn't do it. Coca-Cola is one of those brands that they're so confident. I don't know. They're so confident. They didn't change their logo. They didn't change their drinks. They do change and evolve their messaging, right? Their marketing campaigns and everything they say does evolve with time, because
You know whose fault that is?
Whose fault?
Me and my world of bringing awareness. The
Uh-huh.
awareness world sort of puts them to the challenge to find a better way of conveying their value.
Right.
You know, it's like me, little me is a is fighting. I actually never thought of this before because I'll drink a Coke, so I'm not going to go preach in places where I don't master at all. But at least I think the self awareness world and brands like Coke have a problem. So one of the people that I follow, his name is Jesse Itzler. I think I sent you his profile several times
Yeah.
recently.
Yeah.
Now he's on a war against cereal companies that they lie to him.
Oh, right. I follow.
He's
Serial
a war against.
like
I'm like, I did not see that coming. Like, he's so proactive. He's a guy that is so proactive. He's the guy that I told you of him. He breaks down the year. Every year he needs a giant goal that he must achieve. Like a
yeah,
thing he never thought he can do or something that big. And then he breaks down the year again into 4 quarters with small goals that is
right.
doable, but like drink more water, run so and so. So I'm like, he's so proactive and he's still focused on doing more and being more. I did not see a war against a big company on his platform, and that's what he's been doing.
With his system of experience, he's like, I heard him talk about it, and then he's like, in the end, you'll have 292 mini experiences. I was like,
Yeah, he
oh,
breaks it down all the way till like it's one big one a year. It's on the quarter, and every quarter you have a
then you do something with your and then in the end,
right. So yeah, so I didn't think that I like rage against Coca Cola. I didn't have that thought, but I hear what you're saying that they do have the confidence to stay the same for all those years, but the messaging changes.
their interactions with the audience changes, and it has to
So
because
that's more of a marketing piece. It's not a branding. Their brand stays the same.
yeah, but the part of marketing that always will have branding is the how do you say it, the tone of voice, the words you use, those kind of things. Marketing is more like, are we putting an elephant through town, or are we putting like that's marketing. That's the idea of marketing. But every marketing campaign will need the brand identity to be flawless, right? It needs to be on brand and
Right.
in sync. So yeah, so Coca Cola is that, but interactions change because times change. So you have to keep up and you have to constantly adapt and constantly evolve
So
because
to you, that's an outward thing or an inner? Do you feel like in order to evolve in the messaging or in the I guess in the marketing, in order to change the marketing strategy, does one need to change their brand? Do they need to adjust who they are? Because again, Coke is an excellent example. It looks like they're not changing the slightest.
no,
They keep thinking, how do I package it more healthy? But they're not actually focused on making it more healthy.
no, and
None of their items, they don't have a lights. They didn't even bother putting out an item that's actually health focused. I mean, they came out with an item called Zero,
zero,
which seems healthy, but it isn't.
no,
Right? They're not
no,
actually focused. They could have come out with a line of which they probably own, a line of, let's say, hard seltzer, not hard seltzer, like flavored seltzer, which would be healthier. And but it's not the way we know Coke. Even if I don't know if they own any of these companies, but
they
that's not
might
what they're focused
they
on.
might own a company that does exactly that, but it's not branded as a brand extension as Coke.
That's not they're focused on how do I convey myself in a way that people want to buy it. Is that something that you focus on? How do I convey this person or this company in a way that people buy it? Or do you also focus on like clarity around, does it add up what they do with the value that they want to
Well,
convey?
it's a good question. So my job essentially is similar to your job as a coach, or or my job is similar to to like therapy, so to speak. I sometimes arrive to clients who approach me and they're confused. They don't know what they stand for. They don't know who they are. They barely know what they offer, right? They barely know what they offer. And it's my job to dig through that and figure
Who
out
barely knows what they offer? A service provider, or is it a company that sells items, let's say?
both, even a service provider or a product company. And I'm like, okay, so how are you different than the one that's dominating? they have no idea. They don't know, and maybe they didn't think about it, and I helped them think about it. But really, you have to figure those things out. Why am I here? Why am I doing what I do? What value does it bring? Why does it matter? Right? Why does it matter? If there's 10 others that do it, why does mine matter? Right?
It's interesting because the answer that I get in session with
Mm,
clients is because I need to feed my family.
mm,
And I always reach or aim to reach a place where there is a better reason. And the reason, that's a very good reason. It's not a good reason for someone to buy it. It's a really good reason to sell.
yeah.
It's not a good reason to buy it. It's also not a good way to feel joy. I mean, it's more like, who are you in this industry? And how does that feel when you're actually yourself in that industry? And that's how you stand out from your competitor. And maybe it's a little more fun to get up and make a sale.
Yeah. So I told you this when we spoke, when we chatted not long ago. I told you there's a difference between a company and a brand, right? A brand is something bigger. It's something that speaks to consumers, speaks to people, tries to reach masses, big amounts of audiences. Companies, there are some companies that you and I have never heard of. They're worth millions, right? They don't really require branding. Why? Because they developed a software and a firewall that gets implemented into major companies, and somehow the product or the item is so good that they have contracts with Microsoft for hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Those are not necessarily brands. Those are companies or industries, or rather companies, right? They're conglomerates or companies, right? Conglomerates who own many different brands are also not a brand. They're an umbrella. They're a conglomerate. They're a real business that don't speak direct to consumer, right? And they own 10 different brands that each speak to a consumer with a whole different identity and story for each one. So there is a differentiation between brands and companies. Let me understand if it's a company, if it's you're speaking to consumers, B2B, let me understand your product, let me understand your service. And then there's these three major questions that I always ask. It's based on bigger, like Donald Miller's framework, which is, he's a huge branding expert, worked on Kodak at the time, and actually he did the White House branding, like the branding for the government, the United States government, which is pretty crazy. You like your government.
And if you don't, then maybe they need to hire a new
he created
branding contract.
he's like a guru when it comes to one of the gurus in branding, and he has framework. But there's the three major questions: who are you, what do you do, and why does it matter? Now these questions are not just an answer like because I need to feed my family. That's not good enough, because we're talking in the context of being different. And why does it matter to the consumers? Not to you. Why does it matter to the consumers? So these are the three like big questions that you need to answer and really understand. And the answers to these need to make you different. They need to make you stand out. They need to give you a shot at competing, right? Because nowadays I find it very hard to see any industry or service that don't have competition. Do you agree? Can you give me a service or product or item that
In
does
my
not?
industry, there's so much.
Yeah,
There's so many retreats. There's so many in your industry. There's so many designers and developers and branding agencies and companies, and it's like,
yeah, yeah. And it's the same for most businesses, I think. There's always competition. So you need to be able to stand out and understand how you position yourself as valuable and different. Um, so those are the questions. So when I work with a client, this is kind of the approach. This is kind of the process. We start diving in, understanding the brand. Sometimes clients have no idea what the answers are, and we'll work with them to figure it out. And sometimes clients have a pretty clear idea. I just recently had a call actually with a client, and he is so clear. I was sitting on a Zoom call and not talking much because I was just listening. The guy understood his values, his differentiations, like everything about his brand, everything about how his client target audience, everything about what focus, like how he focused his business to be specific. He just didn't stop talking, and I admired it. I was sitting there saying, wow, I don't have much to say. Let me dig into everything you've created so far and let me think about it. And that's what I did. I couldn't give an opinion or start discussing or talking. I just listened, and I'll have to go back and kind of come up with a game plan. But some clients are clear, some aren't. But it's important for every business to be clear, and that's part of branding. Branding is part of being clear about your business, being clear about what you do, how you stand out, and ultimately all that is put into tangible items, right? So now, let's say we know the answers to these questions. Now we have to put it into something tangible, something that we can put out to the world. So that includes a visual identity, which is in line with your values. It includes a messaging and tone of voice and strategy, like on how you speak and everything you say, the things that you value most, which is used for internal purposes and external. And that's what creating a brand looks like.
I have a challenge for you.
Yeah.
Can you create this first 3 steps on a question and answer thing and make it available on your website for free? A DIY package?
Okay.
Because I'll tell you why I'm challenging you with this. Because here's something I learned. People think that clarity is a one-time thing. Once I'm clear, I know what to do. And the truth is that clarity is an ongoing part of functional living. It's not something that happens once and now I hit my goal. It's something clarity is something that needs to happen over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
So just like with a revamp it makes a lot of sense. Why? Because I evolve, my knowledge evolves, my clients evolve, my prices evolve, the world evolves. And so so just like any clarity.
Yeah.
Like if anyone puts some money in any industry and they don't monitor it and they don't get clear as they go along, they're pretty doomed to fail.
Yeah.
Like someone needs to care for it. Like a child needs care. I need to get clear on what the child needs today. The same goes with a brand.
Have you ever heard the term outdated? Like that company is outdated.
Yeah.
They didn't evolve.
Yeah, they never got clear again. And I think as a parent, as a friend, as a partner, as a husband, as a wife, people that stay in the status quo of clarity and they don't evolve end up finding themselves in frustration that's not necessary. Oh, you could have just said so. Oh, you could have asked, right? That kind of dialogue. You could have just said so. You could have just asked, right? That's called just getting clear again and again and again. So I think that for someone starting out, I want to get to the answer of that in a minute. The original question, this is what you're proposing, is not a contradiction to hiring creative minds to help one support the journey of clarifying their brand and asking these important questions. It's like there is levels in it, and it would be cool if just like the book is available, right? And these and it's probably powerful for people that can't afford a high-end or an expensive marketing agency to help them identify their brand, for them to go buy a book on branding, to ask these questions. And it doesn't always need to cost a lot of money to do that. I always tell this to people with coaching. Most of the coaching work that they will need to do in order to reach their goals does not cost $300 a session. It actually is free. Like breath is free, and meditation is free, and reaching out for support is free, and journaling is free, and offering acts of kindness to the world is free. And there's a world of things that happen that actually don't cost any money. So I love these questions, and I understand that they're super powerful and valuable, and bringing your expertise to challenge those questions is very powerful, and it's a really good start place. I think it's very cool what you're saying. I never looked at it that way. I never understood the depth of what it means to develop a brand.
Yeah, and it's not. It goes a lot beyond what we discussed. It obviously continues digging every interaction, every word, every message, every color, every distinct symbol. All those things are all. And then there's the psychological aspect where we want to make sure that the customer is the hero of the story, and we want to make sure they resonate, and we want to make sure they feel a certain way, and identifying these customers and creating personas. These are all processes and things that go into creating a brand. And the way we help companies and people build something. But to answer your original question, right? You mentioned that you started off by saying, does somebody need to spend $80,000 on day one to develop a brand properly? Do they need to develop a brand or take steps towards doing it the right way? Yes. Do they need to spend $80,000? Not necessarily. Obviously, I'm a little biased, and I thought, when we spoke about this off camera, at some point I came to this realization: I'm biased. Like people pay me to help them do this, so I don't want to say that no, you don't need it, but I will say that there is a hybrid, right? Like you just mentioned, the book that I quoted is available. It's $20. You can buy it on Amazon. Um, I mean, we're on a podcast, so we can talk. There's a great book called The Brand Gap. It's by Marty Neumeier. He worked on Apple, Nike, biggest brands. Great book, right? He has a couple and free $20. So there you go. I'm giving away my trade secrets.
Right. So I don't. You see, so I see things as possibilities for the next place of clarity. I think the book is a place of clarity. Journaling about it before. So I know someone that's starting a brand,
Mhm.
and he's really doing his own work, not with me as a coach. He's doing it on his own. Like, he's not paying anyone.
Yeah.
He's reading the books. He's filling out the sheets. He's coming out to his one-liners that actually make sense until he finds the one that stands out in his opinion. Then he goes to 5 friends or 10 people and he asks them what he thinks. So he does his little data, and he gets that. And I think that is an excellent place to start with no budget. And I think anyone that sells, we used $80,000 as an example. I don't think you charge $80,000 to start a brand, but I guess it depends which brand, and it depends what the work entails. But I think that it's powerful to say that there is a way to get a certain amount of clarity on questions that is really important to ask as an adult, as a person being in an exchange of money and taking people's money and offering an item. It's a really powerful thing to actually offer what you're saying, these tricks, these points, that it doesn't have to cost any money. Just like taking a deep breath doesn't cost any money for relaxation. Not every relaxation method has to be a $5,000 retreat or a psychedelic or a coaching session even.
Right.
Like, there's certain things that are available, and the more you believe in your work, the more you believe that the free version of it is valuable.
Right.
Because otherwise, where does it start? It's either a principle that's there or it's a principle that's not there.
Yeah.
Either it's a scam or it's extremely valuable. Now, the level of it and the gifts that you have been given in order to challenge these questions and come up with valuable answers, that's a gift that you have. I know your work, and people that know, that I put out a retreat a couple of months ago, and I got more phone calls about the graphics than I got for my retreat. It's like, who did your graphics? It's like, so I know that you have that gift, which is why I think your gift and the principles you're sharing are not the same thing. And I think that if I think anyone in their industry, when they realize that, then they have no competition and they're not biased. Because when they find their answer, what you just said, their why, their who, their how, then there's no competition to that. So they can give away whatever they can for free. There's no secrets.
Yeah. We've only talked about like the deep work behind identifying and creating a brand.
Yeah, that might have something to do with the fact that we're talking, like I'm talking.
Yeah.
So that's obviously appealing to me, is the inner work that it requires to do anything.
Yeah, but honestly, if I would have a conversation like this with every client and it's so deep, I'd be in trouble. I think we have to keep it more calm.
Yeah, I think some people just, here's the money, figure it out, and this is what I do, and you do the work for them.
Right.
You find how they stand out. You figure out what the difference. You do your own home. You recently mentioned that you do interviews with different departments and companies, so you find the answers to those questions, and you're like, here's what I found, which I think is super cool and valuable.
Exactly.
You can buy the book and call all your friends, or you can hire someone.
Yeah, and it's more than that. It's also all this work and all this digging and understanding and identifying and positioning, all this really what it leads to is the deliverables, right? And that's what we offer. We offer the deliverables, but it's done the correct way, right? Deliverables would be logo package, the way the brand looks on paper, the colors that the brands represents, because ultimately I always tell my clients that I know I did a good job when your company is identified without a piece of marketing material without the logo.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like
Without the logo.
without the logo on it.
What does that mean?
It
Then with
means
what?
it means colors, it means photography, it means language, it means the titles, like um, like big brands. I can take examples of big brands who would do that. Like Nike, if I see their thing, and Nike, even if there's just a swoosh anywhere in the world, you'll recognize it as Nike.
Or their tagline.
Or their
Yeah.
tagline. Exactly. It's a word, it's a statement, it's a trademark, and it's identifiable. I know which brand where I'm looking at when I read it.
Didn't you tell me recently that initially they thought it's a bad tagline?
Yeah, so
Who told me that
Nike,
recently?
I told you that Nike's CEO, when he was presented with the tagline, with the trademark, he said, I don't love it, but I know it'll probably grow on me.
Which is just do it.
Yeah. So, and then Nike. Oh, so Nike is another good example. Can you get away with not spending so much money? So ultimately, when you're building a brand, you want to make the correct decisions and position the company correctly. And whether you pay someone to do that or do it in house is up to you, right? Nike specifically, they did all of that in house. They positioned their company and they evolved, right? They started off with tennis shoes, and then they did their deal with Michael Jordan and transitioned to sports, and then running, and then it became all about running. So Nike also evolved, but even from the get-go, they did all that internal work in-house. They paid a graphic design student at the time $75 to design their
Really?
logo. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Who's that person now? Do you know?
So that person is very rich because along with the $75, they gave that person a nice share of stock options
Ah.
that actually developed into millions of
So
dollars.
they knew initially that they're going to be that big, like
They
in the beginning.
they had ambition, right? And I think every company has ambition. I just had a conversation today with a client, like right before we got on. He's like, "So listen, let's work on this, and let's think big, because this company is going to be bought out for $100 million." That's what he tells me.
Yeah.
This company is going to be bought out for $100 million. So that's ambition.
You know where I distinguish the difference between La La Land and ambition that is rooted in reality?
Mm.
If the person's 100 million versus 200 million is rooted in any kind of actual reality or just a figure of speech. The person
Mhm.
that tells you as a figure, as just throwing something, it'll be bought out for a lot versus someone that says it'll be bought out for 100 million, 200 million, 300 million, doesn't make a difference to them. It's like one has an actual relationship with that big dream and the other one just throws things. So it can win, it can lose, it can go, it cannot go. I find it not, I'm not saying this as a judgment, I'm saying it as a power source to actually go big. It's like if you go big, if I go big, and Tony Robbins says this about manifestation. If you want to manifest something big, create a reality to that big vision. Like, why is it 100 million? Why is it a million a year? Why is it 2 million? What's the numbers? Where's the money going?
Like manifesting or planning. What is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, manifestation work. It's like if I want to manifest something, one of the things that Tony Robbins talks about a lot, which is what I like, is there has to be rooted in reality. I know we're completely going off topic because you mentioned that, but yeah, it's true that when people start off, a lot of people are very ambitious.
I'm also ambitious, and every venture that I ever was involved in, me personally, I'm trying, like, a venture that excites me is when I can see an end goal of euphoric success, right? That's how I approach these things. I'm like a visionary. I'm, I mean, I am a creative, so that's part of the same brain cells that imagine, what it's going to look like. But
So what's the toughest part for you with that? What's the toughest part for you with seeing something so big and so grand and so euphoric and 100 million and 500 million and the big numbers? Like, what's the struggle with being like that?
it doesn't come sooner, like I'm also logical, and what happens is that as much as I imagine, I know that there are certain steps that require in order to get another
Mm.
mile closer and another mile closer to that big vision. So I'm not in denial, and I know that it requires a tremendous amount of work and a lot of luck and siyata d'shmaya in our case. So the challenge is getting there. The challenge is
So I think that's the value you bring to your clients. You understand the big vision and you understand the amount of effort it takes to build that. And then how can I narrow down that big vision into something that's tangible today?
mm,
A color, a phrase, a piece of marketing material, marketable material that
yeah,
actually conveys that big thing into something very tangible. How is the item actually? I think that people who actually spend time doing this, either they hire a professional agency or they do it on their own, I think their item ends up being good quality. Again, like the Coke conversation is funny to me because it could be that when they started, there wasn't so much health awareness. So they actually thought they're giving people energy, right? It had Coke in it.
mm,
So maybe it did start with that kind of like how do I add value? And I think that people who spend the time and ask the right questions, their item ends up being better. I spoke to someone not too long ago about an Amazon venture, and he told me the guy's an Amazon expert, and he told me that he believes that for someone to succeed, even on an Amazon product, there has to be a passion for it. It's not only about what item sells best. It's like, okay, this item sells well. And now what do you like about it? And how do you want to better this item? Did you buy the competitors and used it and found one thing you can make it better? And
yeah,
he said people that do that end up succeeding more because it's not only, people don't only buy because I need to feed my family or because I have big dreams. People buy because of the value that they get. My coach always says that the world hates a sucker. People like givers. People are attracted to givers. People like givers. And I think I try to balance my work with free, a lot of free, because I like myself in a place of giving. So I think that a lot of the work you do is that, is like to find the person's value that is not only something that they buy. It's like what are you really giving?
yeah.
You
And
know?
then there's more to this framework, which involves, like, I touched on it earlier, from a psychological perspective, making sure that that the consumer will resonate with your brand, right? It'll feel like, let's take Nike. We talked about Nike. Let's take them as an example. Nike's tagline is "Just do it," right? The way I think of it, this is my interpretation, is I want to go running. I want to exercise. I want to do things to keep me active and keep me in shape and stay healthy. And I have trouble with it, right? I need the motivation. I need the thing. When Nike says just do it, they really get me, right? They get me. He's telling me just do it. He gets me. Now, when I'm thinking about buying running shoes, if they get me, of course they make good shoes. Like, of course I'm going to buy from them, right? And
Right.
that's the psychological aspect of, like, positioning and messaging and branding, to really, like, make sure that the user
Not only that I know my
knows.
value and my unique selling point, it actually resonates with the consumer. Actually, people actually feel empowered by my
Of
message. They
course,
really feel like I'm giving them
and
value.
that's where that's not just something that a business owner can answer. That's part of what we do. It's coming up with that strategy, coming up with that position, that approach, right? That's part of the
Yeah.
the creative process, right? So first, we need to identify who are you, what do you do, what do you bring, what the values are, and then we'll create a strategy that works and uses these frameworks to position it, and hopefully that works, and we keep evolving it because companies evolve. So that's overall what branding is. That's overall what marketing is. Um, to answer your question about, whether you have to spend X amount, I told you this on text before we, like last week, I think. Said if you have the money, spend it. If you don't have the money, you're not a lost cause, right? There are things you can do. You could read some books. You could answer these important questions. You could do what Nike did and pay a design student minimal in order to create something that works for you for the time being. um, yeah, it's there are things you can do, and I will probably put it on my website. Put up a free questionnaire, free form, free exercise for people to use. Um, Link in the bio.
Yeah, I think it's also one of the things that, specifically with service businesses, is to really understand how do I, like, I think that focusing on giving value is the way to go, and then the money sort of rolls in. And I know it's a crazy thing to think of when there's bills to pay, and I wouldn't say it if I wouldn't see it working. So I see it with you. Like when you offer a free item, not in a way, oh, now people are going to visit. It's like, this is not supposed to cost money.
Right.
And
It's
I
like
have a
you and
way.
breath. You are so
Yeah, I
adamant that
have,
breathing should be free, right?
as also free. I
Yeah.
know people that run breathwork groups that are worth every penny.
Yeah.
They do something, but not every breathwork should only be available for
Mhm.
$100+ a session.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not every, yoga where I live, there's yoga for $40 a session. There's also free in the park. Is there a difference? Yes. Is the vibe different? Yes. Is it beautiful that it's available on both ends? For sure. And I like to contribute to both, to the
Mm.
magnitude or to the seriousness that the exchange of investment takes, and to the beauty of giving things away. Personally, I like to contribute to both. It helps me sleep at night better. It helps me feel better with my work. It helps me feel a sense of authenticity in what I sort of preach.
Yeah.
And I think that everyone can find that in their business. Even a furniture store that has a box of candies
Right.
right before you walk in, and the salesperson's like, here, hey, take a candy. Or the car dealership has coffee. There's this Mercedes dealership in New Jersey that I love going to. They have the best coffee I've had anywhere near where I live. And I would get myself a black espresso, like a real Italian this. And I loved it. He got me.
Yeah.
Now,
Reminds me of Larry David. He's a comedian. He has a show, Curb Your Enthusiasm, and he's like very rich, and he ends up buying a shit ton of BMWs because the licorice at the dealership is just the best, and they give him attitude if he doesn't buy, and he comes for the licorice. So
exactly.
you just
Now the question goes, exactly. Now the question goes, is it a manipulative thing? Am I doing this act of kindness only because I want to get business?
yeah. So to me, my job is to be manipulative in that sense, in the best sense of the world. It's not manipulative, it's strategy. So to me, yes, it's part of techniques that I will come up with. We'll figure out ways to market and ways to bring value and ways to attract and ways to portray and ways to engage, right? That's the definition of our job. That's
In a
what.
way that it sells. So it doesn't matter necessarily if Coke's item is healthy or not. You are hired to sell.
Oh yeah, I'm not a lawyer. I could choose the clients I want to work with. I've said no to clients before. It's just an industry that I don't feel like I could in good faith do my job, right? It's something about them, it's something about their product, something about their service that I just can't do it in feeling good. So I could say no, right? For this reason
Right.
or for others. But yeah, ultimately, when I have a client, that's my job. My job is to convert, and we'll come up with every strategy framework way possible to do that.
I think that if someone adds the value and they go deep and they find the value in giving value, it's not anymore a question of if it's being manipulative or only doing it to get back sales. It's not even about that. It's about the value. And the value stays about value, and then charging is about charging.
Yeah,
And I think that it's about who I am and how I sleep at night, rather than okay, then the sale needs to be a sale. Okay, am I going to keep giving free stuff if I can't cover my rent? No, I'm going to go get a job and stop giving things away for free.
yeah,
But as long as these two things can simultaneously exist, I think it's a valuable thing to look at value for the sake of value, and then whatever I sell for the sake of sales. And I can see that what you do is the bridge, and you need to worry less about how I feel about it, and I worry more about like how do I increase joy in my life, and how does the joy equals increase success and reaching goals. Because I think that I really like, again, what Tony Robbins says, that you can build success on failure, you can bluff success on failure, but you can't reach actual success on a plateau of failure. There has to be something that's positive, and on that positive I build. So if I give candy at the entrance and I actually enjoy when the person says, "Ooh, this is good candy," that's something I can build on.
Yeah.
Now, if I think of it that way, that's something positive. If I think of the candy as manipulative, that's negative. It's going to come back and bite. The
Yeah.
next guy's going to give candy, and they'll like that candy more, and I'm done.
On this note, like look at McDonald's, right? One of the biggest brands. I haven't gone around, but I know that McDonald's for a very long period, at least while we were kids and we were growing up, they had McDonald's had this like for kids, this jungle gym, right? They used to have slides
Yeah,
and stuff like that.
yeah,
Now, it seems like they're giving value. They want to give value to their customers. But really, I wouldn't be, I'd assume that somebody in an office who was working on the creative and the marketing figured out
right,
moms will 74%
yeah,
of moms will bring their kids to McDonald's if they had this,
right,
right? It is
right.
a numbers thing.
So it doesn't actually matter in a marketing standpoint, like from a marketing glasses. It does matter for the person's own relationship with their emotions,
Yeah.
or their own relationship with their value or pride or well-being. But it doesn't necessarily matter for the messaging. As
Mm.
long as the value is there, then the value works, because it is actually
Yeah,
valuable.
exactly.
That's the crazy thing.
Exactly.
And I think that's what mitach shaloi lishma bu lishma means,
Right. Right.
because it doesn't matter. Value is value.
Yeah.
I think that's also the dance of the inner work that I do a lot, and where you come in, which is actually messaging and putting things out. Because there's so much I can do with my inner world. If it's not put out, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And the same goes the other way. If I don't actually value the value that I give, I'm not going to feel good no matter what I do.
Yeah.
So I think there's a place for all of it.
And ultimately, like I started this conversation, like, is all of this going to create a successful business? It will help, but the business needs to be doing good. The product needs to be good. The value propositions, the values need to be real values.
Right. If someone puts out a company that does so and the item arrives and it's not that, they're pretty likely going to fail.
It's the people start believing your branding once they experience it, and it's true, right? They start believing
Yeah.
it post experience, not before, and that's when they turn into a customer, right? So branding is what people say about you when you're not in the room. That's not my quote. That's Jeff Bezos, by the way.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, these guys have real understanding and real connection to branding. And that's why they are so successful. It's people who have a very good knack for this.
Right. So Tesla invests a lot more in branding than in sales. Than in marketing. They identify their brand so strongly, and it stands out so well, and the messaging is so strong that they'll spend less on paper ads than any other car company. I think they spend none. No, they don't do like billboards and any of that.
I'm not. I honestly, I didn't look into it, so I don't know. Sometimes people assume that because I'm in marketing, like I have friends too. Sometimes because I'm in marketing or I do marketing and branding, I should know everything about every company.
Well, you will. You're young. Talk to you in 10 years.
What?
Talk to you in 10 years when you do your TED Talk.
Okay.
That is for free, just saying. By then, you're going to know the answer.
Yeah, I don't know everything, but I learn every day. But yeah, Tesla, from at least as a, I'm not a consumer, I'm just somebody on the sidelines watching. So to me, Tesla seems like their position is we're confident. That's what I see from Tesla. They're confident. They don't need dealers. They have their own. They sell direct to consumer. They disrupt the market. They challenge the status quo, similar to like Apple, right? So that's what I think Tesla's position is from just the standing on the sidelines. But I'm not a fan of Tesla. So like I'm not a fan of their product. So as good as their branding can be, I just if their product lived up to it, then maybe I'd be a customer. But I'm not.
which is also something to understand that not everything is for everyone. And part of this identity is to understand who is it for and how do I reach them.
Yeah.
I think that's also a powerful thing to feel confident with.
Yeah.
I have a question before we wrap up. Where does inspiration come from? Where does, like, I've seen what your work, and you really come up with sometimes very unique colors or ideas, or like a way to convey something in a very new way for a specific industry. So where does creativity come from? And my follow-up question to that is, how does one get the most from you or from an agency?
Okay, so it's a loaded question, but I'll try to be concise. Inspiration, creativity. I'll say it. I'll be honest, because this podcast is called "Let's Be Real," so I'll just say it how it is. Um, First thing, I'm on top with trend. Like, I live on sites that show inspiration and latest awards for graphic design, latest awards for user experience, UX, UI, books with case studies of the biggest brands, all those things. And from a visuals perspective, yeah, I have like tons of resources where I try to stay up to date and understand what is now trendy and what works. And every industry kind of developed its own kind of like rule book on how the visual identity is supposed to look like, in some sense. Where do you use gradients? Where do you use this? So these are rules that I constantly stay in touch with and on top of. When I work on a specific project, I research all of their competitors, so I understand how they look like. And I find inspiration in these kind of things. Sometimes I have to dig deeper. Sometimes I recently worked on a project where I needed to walk the streets and look at, it was a glass project. I needed to walk around the streets, look at glass, inspect it. And I was like, I was in Zara, like a clothing store. I saw a glass shelf and I was standing there taking pictures of the reflection and the colors, the way it reflects. So, like, I had to walk out and find the inspiration physically, right? I had to look at buildings, look at glass, inspect it, hold it, feel it, touch it. All those things caused me to figure out a direction in terms of design. So it's easy, it comes quick, and sometimes it's work. Ultimately, every time I start physically designing, I start doing, and it starts coming. It's like creating a song. You start, and then all of a sudden you have a thing, a chorus. All of a sudden you have a drop. Whatever the terminology is for songs. But yeah, as you sing and as you work, it starts forming itself.
Which is similar to clarity. Clarity is not a one-time thing. So as you keep doing the work, your inspiration for what this design could look like, or this visual could look like, or what this company can be expressed like, it comes as you do your work. That's interesting.
But also, because there's usually in these projects there's a good baseline, we already identified the tone of voice and the messaging, and all those things help.
How does one get the most out of you if they hire you or they hire an agency? I've watched, like, someone I know closely hire a reputable company, and many years ago, this is 10 years ago or more. I think you did a revamp at one point, or a new website, but they were just a number. They got either a copy paste from another site, or just, and they're capable of doing better work. They just didn't get that better work. Is it about, like, driving the company crazy? Like, give me more options, give me more options until something better comes. Like, what is it really that's going to help them get the most for their buck?
I usually don't give, when I do a visual, like a logo package or a brand package, I usually don't show more than one option. You know why? Because it's not options. It's not optional. It's almost like we put in the work to identify and to create the base and understanding, and then
Don't you do two or three? I've
so,
seen some that you do two and
yeah.
three.
So sometimes when I actually create, sometimes if I end up with more than one option that is on
You're
brand,
going to present all of them.
I have to present.
Uh,
I feel like it would be wrong. Even if I have a favorite, I'll present if I have some more than one that's
and
viable.
also, this is not for logo. Like, sometimes logos, you do create more than one, or you create only one, or both.
Ideally, it's one. I mean, in my contract, I The client could exercise the option to ask for another one, but ideally it's one.
So
Because
it's negotiable. It's a conversation, though.
yeah, but there's no need for another one, or no need for five. There's no need,
If the
never
work is
no
done
need
right
for, if
beforehand.
it's done right and the work
Uh,
is done right, then the logo will present.
so something powerful that you shared with me that's worth sharing further. Something really powerful. You shared with me that you've done a round of presenting and they didn't like any of it, and you presented another, and you prepared and they paid or whatever agreement you had with the client to create another round, and you walked into that meeting that if they don't like anything, you're going to dismiss yourself from the contract, which means you would give them back your money, because if this didn't work, then nothing is going to work, which means they'll always feel like they got less. And again, the contract protects you because everyone is going to hire now, because eventually you're going to give back the money. You can technically keep the money, and they don't need to use the branding that you did. But what I found powerful is that there is a point in creativity that if this didn't work, then there's someone else that might work. And I can, from a self-work or self-confidence place, to know what I'm not is really, really powerful. It's like I'm not the free agency or the free branding or the book. I'm something else. That's powerful. So if I did 3 rounds and it didn't help them, then it's probably best if they hire someone else, rather than you beating on yourself and whatever you create is not good.
Yeah,
It worked out. They loved what you made. So
yeah. So
in
so
5 minutes, you said.
Yeah, so sometimes I have to tell clients that when I'm presenting a visual identity or visual storytelling and graphic design, like full decks or website, sometimes it's not about, I tell them, it's not about you liking it, right? You have to put on now glasses of your customer, because we've identified your customer, we've identified the values you bring, we've identified the whole story well enough that now that person should resonate. So it's really not about you. It's funny because the client is the one that pays me, but it's not about you. You don't need to like it. And that goes back to Nike, where he said, I don't love it, but I'm sure it'll grow on me, because he understood it's not about him. It's about the customer.
Yeah, that's powerful. I think in the opposite is powerful too. If someone doesn't like my work, it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's like this is the branding that puts me out. This is my message. This is my value. And there's so much, like you said, every industry is flooded, and it's not getting any less. It's really meant for people to find their own clique, their own tribe, their own clientele, their own community, their own network, their own game, their own language, their own voice, their own color. And success comes from that way. The everything, the anything, the everyone, the 20 options is generally limiting rather than expanding.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting principle. And I think in your industry, people want from you to solve all their problems, like solve all of my struggles by giving me the most for my money.
Yeah.
And it's a
And
challenging place to be.
yeah. And it goes back to saying that ultimately we can plan, we can create, we can say the right words. Your product, your service, you need to do that well. You need to do that well, and you need to deliver what you promise, right? You need to deliver what we tell the world you deliver. Ultimately, that will continue pivoting and creating success. There's like so much more that we can talk about, but we tapped the surface for sure in a deep way. So I hope that audience will follow. They'll be able to follow.
Yeah, I think some really useful there's some really useful advice in here, free useful advice.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I feel like you gave me the world, felt like I was speaking to the world.
You did, because we never know where this is going to go.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your 2 cents and I think important valuable information. Thank you.